Another update from the Israel-Gaza border. We do understand Israeli forces are operating inside Gaza City. Palestinian media indicates those troops are within half a mile of the Al-Shifa hospital, a location the Israelis say is a headquarters for Hamas, and they expect to find tunnel entrances at the hospital. One issue here, though, is the civilian population that has not yet left Gaza City. There are still patients at Al-Shifa hospital. The Israelis are still encouraging people to leave Gaza City. Today, reportedly, thousands of Palestinians took this evacuation corridor on the Saladin road that runs from the northern part of Gaza to the southern part. But still, there are many Palestinians, non-combatants in Gaza City that are around where these forces are operating. We can expect in the coming days and weeks, the Israelis will work to clear this area even further. But there are challenging battles ahead as Israeli forces say they are still being ambushed by Hamas fighters inside Gaza.
So at this point, it's been over a month since this war started, and for the most part, Hamas is nowhere to be found. Don't get me wrong, there's been a couple of days of intense firefighting, there's been skirmishes, little run-ins, and of course Hamas has been ambushing the Israeli army, but for the most part, they're kind of nowhere to be found. The IDF is just steamrolling right through Gaza with very little effort. All of the fighting that I've seen so far, of course, it's been, like guerrilla warfare tactics. Hamas pops out of a tunnel under a bush and fires an RPG real quick. Like, I'm seeing things like that. But for the most part, Hamas has not been putting up the fight that I think everyone was anticipating that they would. And I think that's a reason why we're seeing Hezbollah and these other groups, I don't want to say back down, but they definitely have somewhat backed down. Not all the way. Anything could still happen. They're still fighting. There's still rockets flying all over the place, being sent from all over the place. But there's a tad bit of hesitation there. And I'm thinking that's because Hamas is, I don't know where they're at. I've seen Palestinians, I've seen several videos now of Palestinians in Gaza complaining that Hamas is either hiding in their tunnels or they're long gone. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the leaders of Hamas, they're not in Gaza. They're jet-setting around the world on private planes, eating caviar and drinking cocktails. I know a lot of people think, the leaders of Hamas, they're down there in Gaza, fighting from the ground, directing their soldiers. No, they're in other countries living it up as the people in Gaza, for lack of better words, are getting blown to smithereens. It's really sad. And just about a month of fighting, we've seen 32,000 tons of explosives go off in Gaza. Over 13,000 bombs have been dropped. 40,000 buildings entirely demolished. Billions of dollars in damage. Half of the housing units in Gaza have been wiped out. And that's just in a month. Who knows how long this situation can go on for. But I find it despicable and disgusting that the leaders of Hamas are out here living it up while their people are going through what they're going through. But then again, I have to question, when they carried out this attack against Israel on October 7th, they knew that there was going to be a response. They knew that there would be a dramatic response and it would get ugly. But it doesn't look like they really prepared for it at all. And in the long run, it's the innocent people in Gaza who are suffering from all of this. As these fighters hide in their tunnels, and some of them probably are finding ways to get the hell out of there. The innocent people continue to suffer. But luckily, they have had 4-hour pauses in fighting over the last few days. They've had these pauses in fighting so people can get out of the area. People can evacuate. The problem I'm seeing, though, is you evacuate people from one area, and then the area you evacuate them to, you evacuate them from that area, and it's just long lines of people, a lot of which have injuries, a lot of which are, dealing with this crazy situation. I would think they're not in the best place mentally or physically, and they're being told, oh, today you got to walk miles and miles to evacuate this way. Tomorrow you got to go this way. It's getting really sad. But like I said, as all of this is happening, the leaders of Hamas are flying in private jets, eating 5-star meals, sleeping with beautiful women, drinking the finest liquor, and you name it. And it's just a sad sight to see. And some people think that there's no rich people in Gaza, but that's because they've been told a lie about how things are in Gaza. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to live there, but people call it a open air prison. And I don't think these people realize that there's a beautiful beach in Gaza. There's literally beachfront resorts, nice places. There are some nice places in Gaza. Unfortunately, some of these resorts, at least according to the Israeli army, have been taken over by Hamas. And as we speak, Israeli forces are headed towards one of these resorts to confront Hamas. They say Hamas has tunnels underneath and that Hamas is operating out of rooms in this, it's a resort. It's like something you would see in Hawaii. Imagine staying at a resort in Gaza not knowing Hamas is operating, out of the room next to you. So it's a real crazy situation. But I think people need a better understanding of what Gaza is, what life in Gaza is really like. I see all of this. It's a prison. It's an open air prison. But that's not necessarily the case. Now, Gaza is small. It's like the size of New York City. But the amount of destruction that we've seen, I don't know if Gaza will ever be able to recover from this. And when they do, it's going to be a long, long time. It's a very sad situation. So yeah, right here, the IDF is claiming that 30 Hamas operatives were actually at the Blue Beach Resort firing anti-tank missiles at Israeli forces. So needless to say, the Israeli army is about to level that place to the ground and then straight up bulldoze it. And when I say bulldoze it, I mean that literally. Like, the Israeli army is going in here with bulldozers with tanks behind it. A tank will shoot off a couple of shots and the bulldozer will just bulldoze straight through these buildings. I mean, the amount of destruction, it's almost hard to actually comprehend. But at the same time, I thought we would have seen a little bit more fighting. The fighting seems to be one-sided. Where is Hamas? Now, earlier I was talking about how these proxy groups, these little militias, these militant groups all around the Middle East, I talked about how they seem to be backing down against Israel just a tad bit. But they're not backing down against U.S. forces. This is what's kind of confusing for me. All of these groups claimed that they were going to go to war with Israel if Israel invaded Gaza. We haven't necessarily seen that happen yet. But the attacks on U.S. bases have been constant. Now, I understand the U.S. and Israel are allies. Maybe these groups view an attack on the U.S. as an attack on Israel as well, and vice versa. That doesn't fly over my head. But I see a reluctance to take on Israel directly from these groups, yet they're not reluctant to attack U.S. forces. Why is that? I'm really wondering why that is. I think that they have been emboldened to the point that they don't necessarily fear the U.S. as much as they do Israel. I think that these groups think they can get away with doing more to U.S. forces than they can to Israel. If one of these groups were to directly strike out at Israel, Israel would strike back very quickly. You better believe it. At least that's how things have been going. But they strike America, and America sits here twiddling our thumbs for weeks on end, and then we respond by carrying out airstrikes on empty freaking warehouses and stupid stuff like that. Now, I reported to you all the day before yesterday that we did carry out airstrikes in Syria. Well, guess what? Those airstrikes haven't stopped anything. There's been multiple attacks against U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq since then. And now we're starting to see an evolution. At first, there were just drone strikes and little rocket strikes. There was actually some firefights going on between U.S. forces and these other forces in Syria the other night, and a roadside bomb went off yesterday in Iraq as American forces, along with some of their allies in Iraq, were trying to travel down the road. So we're seeing them ramp up attacks against the U.S. military, yet they're not ramping up attacks against Israel. Why is that? Maybe your guess is as good as mine, but I really do think that they know they can get away with more. But here's my thing. We have troops sitting in Syria and Iraq right now, and in many ways, they kind of feel like sitting ducks. From a military standpoint, obviously, I don't want this situation to get worse. But from a military standpoint, you either get those troops the hell out of this dangerous area, or you strike back in a way that actually matters, that actually does damage. They keep talking about, oh, it's deterrence, deterrence. The key word they use is deterrence. Oh, we're sending these ships to deter our enemies from doing anything. We're flying these planes to deter this, to deter that. It's not working. Every single day, a half a dozen attacks on U.S. bases and U.S. soldiers is not working. Yemen just shot down a drone. The Houthis in Yemen shot down a drone, like a $30 million drone. And they went out and recovered it. The U.S. didn't even try to. So now they've recovered some of our equipment. Who knows what they can figure out by doing that? But this deterrence, it's not working. Maybe you've deterred people from further striking out against Israel, but you haven't deterred anyone from striking U.S. forces. So what is that? And every single day, the number of injuries is going up, and I know they're not accurately being reported. Now they claim there's been 56 injuries against U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. 25 cases of TBI. So the number of injuries is going up. How long before there's a casualty? Maybe there already has been and we just don't know it. I could tell you right now, they're not telling us about all of the attacks. And once they do tell us about the attacks, they're telling us like a week or two later. Days later. By the time they confirm one attack, there's already been 7 more. So at this point, things aren't slowing down on that front. So I say either you get our troops the hell out of there, or you make the necessary moves to ensure that they're safe. And those moves have not been made as of right now. It's crazy to me that I'm seeing more attacks on U.S. forces than attacks on Israeli forces, and Israel is invading Gaza. But for now, I'm going to keep watching the situation play out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you're feeling generous, you can drop a super thanks to support the channel. Or you can support the channel for free by hitting that like button, subscribing, ringing that notification bell. And I'll talk to you all very soon in the next video.